It doesn't really feel like I should be 3 years old in this podcast, but here we are. The most amazing accomplishment of all is that we're impacting lives. We all have a calling and we all have something that we're put here to do. My heart is truly to not only guide myself in that process, but to pull as many people along on that journey with me as I can. Going forward, the idea is to truly integrate. It's not just to heal, but it's how can I take these modalities or these resources or this advice, and how can I integrate that into my life and become a whole new person through it? You are not what happened to you. Even though trauma can shape you, it is not who you are. Modern day culture tells us that we honor our pain and our trauma, and we begin to build our identity around that thing. We have to understand that trauma is just an experience. If applied correctly, it can be a place of growth, and it can be a place of transformation in a really beautiful way. The most important thing to remember is that your nervous system doesn't change through intention alone. You also have to have a repeated, embodied experience that shifts your nervous system. Your body, your physical body, is the fastest way out of survival mode. This is a place where you feel seen and you feel heard, but you also feel challenged. This is a place that is going to push you to be your best self, not out of critique or condemnation, but out of love and support and accountability. An exploration of trauma, transformation, and triumph. Your healing starts here. On Through the Trauma podcast, we don't just talk about transformation, we ignite it. This season, I'm inviting you to something extraordinary. It's called the burn ceremony. Picture this, a guided, powerful ritual where we symbolically burn away all of the old versions of yourself that's no longer serving you. This is not just a ceremony, it's a rebirth. A chance to let the flames of transformation forge you into your new identity. And whether you're ready to break old chains or step into your next level of unstoppable, this is your moment. Join us for the burn ceremony and experience a shift like never before. Head on over to our website at www.burnitceremony.com and claim your spot, because this year we're going to rise from the ashes together. Okay, guys, so I am back. This is season 4. That means we're going into the 4th year of recording Through the Trauma podcast. And I am so excited. I'm so excited to get into this new year. I'm excited about the potential. And I'll be honest, I'm super excited to just see how everything has transpired over these last 3 years. And it's funny because it doesn't really feel like I should be 3 years old in this podcast, but here we are going into season 4, and it's an amazing accomplishment on so many levels. But those of you who know me, you know the most amazing accomplishment of all is that we're impacting lives. And that is what my main goal has been from the get-go, is to truly make an impact in people's lives. And I know that I've done that when I get messages or people reach out to me in DMs or calls or text, and they're just like, Amber, I don't know why, but I feel like I needed to reach out to you. I feel like I needed to share this with you. Those kinds of messages are often, they hit me the hardest because I'm like, and in a good way, they hit me because I'm like, we're making an impact with this podcast. And so that is really my goal. That's where I've wanted to go from day one. There's been many times, if it was up to me, that I probably would have walked away from this podcast because there's so much that comes along with it. But God says, no, you're not going to quit. You're going to keep pushing through. And I've said that before on this podcast, and I will stick to that story because that is certainly where God has had me throughout this journey of Through the Trauma podcast. So today, I don't want to do too many introductions and all of those kinds of things. What I really want to do is just get into this whole idea that we are shifting. Things are shifting. I feel like our universe is shifting, and I'm also shifting. I had an event that took place last year, and I won't get into the details or the semantics of it, but basically, I had kind of got put into this healing course, and it was about building your dream life, and it was so impactful to me on so many levels. But I felt in that moment, I felt something inside of my heart that was beginning to shift. Something happened, and I felt the shift in my heart and in my soul that something was different after going through this process. And I truly believe all people should go through a process like that, especially in their lifetime. And I feel like now is the very best time to actually go through that process. Why? Because the universe, an energetic force inside of the universe that is pushing shifts and changes. And if you're a Christian, you know that going into the last days, we're going to experience lots of things that we look and we see. These things are happening all over the world, but I don't attest to this idea that I'm a victim, and I don't attest to the idea that God wants us to be just victims in the end days. I truly believe that God wants us to fight, and he's put us here. The scriptures say that he told Esther, God has raised you up for such a time as this. And I believe that we all have a purpose, we all have a calling, and we all have something that we're put here to do, and we're supposed to do while we're here on this earth. And therefore, my heart is truly to not only guide myself in that process of figuring out where that is God wants me to go, but to pull as many people along on that journey with me as I can. And I've been blessed because this podcast has given me immense opportunity to do that. So I want to get into a little bit today as to where we're going. And I know I've had these kinds of episodes before. If you're listening to this simultaneously over the course of back to back episodes, you're binging on episodes, you may be like, oh, she said this. Guys, look, I'm trying to still get clarity on this whole thing too. I walk by faith, not by sight. God says, take a step and put it in front of the other. Take one foot and put it in front of the other. And that's what I'm doing. And I don't know any different except to do that. It's not like, as much as I would love for God to give me this full, clear vision of this is exactly where you're going and this is where you can see yourself in 5 years. I mean, I have those visions and those dreams, those things where I would like to see myself in 5 years, but it doesn't always mean that that's God breathed. It sometimes means that that's just Amber breathed, and that's my goals. But life can always take a turn, and God can always come in and speak and say, nope, that's not where I want you to go. So first and foremost, this is the thing, and this is the thing with Through the Trauma podcast. As I've gotten clarity over the last 3 years and going into this 4th year, I can say that this episode is not going to be for everyone. And honestly, this podcast is not going to be for everyone. If you are a victim or you attest to that victim mentality, you're probably not going to align with this podcast. If you are someone who says, no, I don't attest to that, I don't want to be a victim anymore, Amber, I want to grow and thrive and move and lean into my purpose, then maybe this podcast is for you. And that's intentional. It is intentional because I want to make it very clear. I am someone who believes in alignment, so much so that I have aligned my life and the relationships that I have in my life to this idea of, hey, if we are aligning, and maybe we align for a time, maybe we don't align at all, let's don't waste our time. I don't want you wasting time listening to a podcast that is not going to resonate with you. So if this is not for you, it's not for you. However, for those of you who it is for, we're going to make major impact. And it's coming over this next year. I feel it. I feel it in my heart. I feel it in my soul. I feel it with my entire being of who we're becoming. And I'm so excited about where we're going, because season 4 is not going to be just about telling better stories, guys. It's going to be about shifting identities and becoming the person that you want to become, the person that you need to become to fulfill your purpose, and looking at things from a different perspective. If you're here and you're trying to look for comfort and validation, or someone to pat you on the back, this is probably not the space for you. There's many places like that, and I encourage you, go find those places, because that's the place that's going to resonate with you and going to align with you. But if you're here because you want responsibility, you want regulation, you want to rebuild your life in power and strength and resilience, you know what? You're in the right place. So I want to invite you to continue not only to listen to this episode, but continue to listen going into season 4. You can tell I've got a little bit of a new look in my studio, as I have added some lighting and just some visual things. If you're listening to this, you won't see that, but if you are watching it, and you can definitely see, and if you compare this to previous episodes, you'll definitely see that as well. So why is the question, right? Why do we do anything that we do? Well, life is about growth, and we shouldn't ever get stagnant in our lives. I really began to struggle back about 6 months ago with the podcast. And I think there was an internal struggle inside of me, because I was concerned that I wasn't truly executing. I was going through the motions, but I wasn't truly executing in my purpose. And so I thought, I'm getting really burned out, but I don't want to stop doing the podcast. I was scared I would lose momentum. And I caught myself moving through in force, not in flow. And for those of you who understand that, you would understand that anything you do in force is not, it's not as powerful as the things that you can truly move in flow. And so I did take a break intentionally. And, that's mainly because I was struggling. I was going through the motions, and I was trying to produce this podcast, but I wasn't truly producing it in power and in strength and in the true essence of what this podcast really should be. This podcast is evolving, and it has evolved. And I want you to know that going forward, we're in a place of integrating this into our lives. It's not just about, hey, I have a trauma story. That's kind of how it began, was, hey, you have a trauma story that can maybe impact or inspire others. And then it was, hey, we're going to talk to experts, and we're going to bring experts on that can give real practical advice and opinions as to how to overcome trauma, looking at different modalities of trauma healing or different resources that we can execute to make our trauma better. And I think that going forward, the idea is to truly integrate. It's not just to heal, but it's how can I take these things, these modalities or these resources or this advice that people is giving me that are experts in this space, and how can I integrate that into my life and become a whole new person through it? Because we all know that shifting and changing, yes, changes make an impact. And this goes back to why I'm doing this, starting season 4 right around the first of the year. I normally start my seasons in March, because that's when the podcast started. So I go a whole year, and then we launch another season. But this year I wanted to do it around the first, because I feel like we want to integrate in an entire new identity. That's how we make shifts stick. We can say, I'm going to start a diet, or I'm going to start a program or something that is going to help me get better. But once that program's over, it doesn't really stick. So how do we make these things stick? And this is what we're going to get into this year. And the experts and things that we talk to, we want to shift our identities to the point that these things, these proclamations that we're making, are going to stick for the long haul. And that's my goal here through the trauma, because that's something that I've had to go through. It's a journey that I think all human beings have to go through at some point in their life. They have to. And this is truly what makes leaders. This is what makes you get to the point in your life and in your journey where you can look back and you can help other people transpire and overcome what they're trying to overcome. And it's not anything to be ashamed of. If you are in the midst of trauma or you're in the midst of trying to overcome, it's not bad to look to someone who is a leader and say, hey, I need your help. It's ego that tells us we don't need anyone's help. That's what tells us, hey, we're not going to reach out to people because my ego says I can do this all on my own. Can you? Can you do it all on your own? Because I attested to that same narrative for so many years, and I can't do it alone. I know that. I have said often here that if it was up to me, I would have a coach in every single place that I could in my life. I would have a coach, but I don't know if that's necessarily feasible because education is one thing and then executing is something different. Sometimes we learn by just getting our hands dirty, by just jumping in and doing stuff. And there's a balance there. But at the end of the day, I want this podcast to produce leaders. If you are a listener to this podcast, my goal is to make you a leader in what you know, what you're familiar with, and whatever trauma that you have overcome to make you a leader. Because why? We lack leadership. We lack people who can step in and say, hey, I can help you. I went through this thing. I can help you. We're all busy and we're consumed with so many things that we're doing on our own. We're consumed with our phones. We're consumed with entertainment. We're consumed with news and mainstream media. There's so many things that take over our time, and we lack human interaction. And I truly believe that there's a problem with that. Okay, so let's jump into this, because without further ado and me going on too many tangents, because I totally can, for those of you who know me. So without me doing that, let's jump into this, because I want to make a very dramatic statement, which is your trauma is not your identity. This is not who you are. You are not what happened to you. And everyone has something that possibly they feel shame about. They have a past. They have things they're not proud of. But even though trauma can shape you, it is not who you are. And we must understand that fundamental first. Somewhere down the line, this modern day culture tells us that we honor our pain and our trauma, and we begin to build our identity around that thing. And this is where so many issues come in. And this is where the victim mentality is born, because this is what happened to me. And now it's part of me. I am a divorced woman, but that doesn't mean that that is my identity. That doesn't define who I am. That is a guidepost in my life that tells me, hey, there's some places that possibly I need to work on. There's some mistakes that I made. As I reflect back over my life, what happened to make that a result? Was it my fault? Was it someone else's fault? How did I respond? How could I have responded better? There's so many different areas that we can approach these kinds of things, regardless if it happened to us, if it was a result of what we caused to happen to us, or a result of what someone else did to make it happen to us. We have to understand that trauma is just an experience. It's not your personality. It's not who you are. It is an experience that happened to you. And if applied correctly, it can be a place of growth, and it can be a place of transformation in a really beautiful way. I don't know if you've heard this idea that once you break a bone, when that bone grows back, it grows back stronger. So it's stronger than it even was before. So when you have gone through whatever you've gone through, if it has broken you down mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever, once you build that back, you grow back stronger. And if you've ever noticed and you've talked to someone who has undergone a lot of trauma, they are usually the strongest people. And it's such a beautiful thing. And I have had such an amazing opportunity to be able to sit with people on this podcast and talk with people. And if you have listened to stories of trauma, and you've listened to a lot of them, you are going to pick up on this pattern as well. And if you haven't listened to a lot of stories of trauma, go back. I have over 100 episodes that you can go back and you can listen to people explain their traumas. And I guarantee you, you will see strength rise. The more trauma someone's went through, the more dedicated they are to rising, if they so choose that path. Yes, we can also choose the victim mentality path, but trauma can be a growth mechanism if we allow it to. So let's talk a little bit about trauma and healing and what really makes real change. This is the science behind it, which I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to pretend like I am, but there's this thing inside of us called the nervous system. Emotions can send our nervous system in chaos. It's up to us to be able to regulate our nervous system. Therefore, we have to regulate our emotions. Emotions is what comes in. Something can happen. It's usually in the form of a trigger, can happen to us. Our emotions respond and react, and then it is up to us to regulate our nervous system. Now, so many people don't. They don't realize really what's happening. A trigger happens, emotional responses is activated, and their nervous system is activated. People don't see that. And for many years, I didn't see that either. I just thought, this thing happened, it pissed me off, I got angry, and I reacted. Well, as I got older, and I do think this comes with age, but it also comes with experience and learning and an intentional effort put forth that says, I'm not going to be that person anymore. So you start to learn how to regulate these things. And I believe that regulating your emotions is probably the most important thing that you can do, because our emotions are mile markers that we have that's telling us, it's signaling that something's wrong. It's telling us, hey, why am I reacting this way? Now, we can regulate that nervous system by asking questions. So we ask ourselves, why am I responding this way? Why do I have this feeling about this particular emotion? What about that made me pissed off? And sometimes you'll find you don't know. You don't know what made you mad. You don't know why it irritated you or why it set you off. You don't know. Our brains are remarkable organs, but they can also be very extremely difficult things to understand. So sometimes it's not for us to get into the science behind it. If you want to get into the science, there's other podcasts that you can go to and listen to that is going to go in depth with that. I'm not a scientist. I just know that if you want to truly learn how to manage emotions, you have to learn how to calm your nervous system when you're in the midst of trauma or when you're in the midst of being triggered from a past trauma. Now, once we figure out how to calm the nervous system or how to regulate out our nervous system and keep that kind of regulated, what do we do next? Because obviously, if you've ever been affected by a trigger, you know that then this trigger can happen multiple times and you can be triggered by it again and again and again. So how do we keep from being triggered by things like that is constantly being pushed on us? Well, repetition is the key to transformation. Consistency is the key to transformation. The most important thing to remember is that your nervous system doesn't change through intention alone. You also have to have a repeated embodied experience that shifts your nervous system from responding that way to whatever it is you're responding to. Now, I could talk on this for so long. I'm not going to get into the details of this here, but there are tactical things that you can do. And as this season progresses, we're going to get into some of that. We're going to talk to some experts that's going to help us on that journey of transformation into becoming a 2.0 version of yourself. But for now, I just want you to know that this is kind of the direction that we're taking in through the trauma podcast, because the ultimate goal, and I think we all want the same thing here, which is we want people to get healed. I want you to be healed. I want the world to be healed. I want people to get rid of trauma and stop using that as an excuse. Stop focusing on the trauma that they have and start focusing on the impact that can be made. start utilizing the things that's happened to help them make more of an impact going forward. And in the end, we want to regulate out that nervous system so that we can feel safe. Because when we feel safe, that's where we can really begin to focus on changing and focus on helping and focus on purpose. So we have to get ourselves under control, and then our life can begin to follow, and then we can become the leader that we really should be in our lives and in our families and even in our own personal growth. And I'm also going to go out on another limb here, and I'm going to say that your body, your physical body, is the fastest way out of survival mode. If you have nowhere else to go, the first place that you can go, if you are in the midst of an emotional crisis, the very first place you can go is to your breathing, which is controlled in your physical body, and movement. Emotion is energy in motion. It affects how you feel. It affects everything about who you are and how you respond to things in the moment. How do I know this? I am a photographer. I come from a photography background. I love photography. I studied for years how to make women look and feel empowered in their photos. I did this through posturing. How we posture our body determines how we feel about ourselves. If we have a powerful, confident stance and we enter a room in a powerful, confident stance, we are going to feel powerful and confident. Versus if we enter a room shielded and guarded and scared and timid, you're also going to feel that. Try it. Try it right now. Go ahead. If you're in a place where you can, posture your body, make your body feel confident, stand up, envision in your mind who you think of when you think of someone being confident. When you see politicians step out on stage, what do? They're posturing their body. They're coming out and they're being very intentional about how they posture themselves. I'm getting into this because I want to prove a point to you that how you act in your body, your mind tells your body, do this thing, and then that is going to control how your emotional state becomes. If I'm sad and I can't get out of sadness, and I tell myself, Amber, you're going to get up and you're going to dance or go for a run or go out in nature. What I do with my body is going to determine my emotional state. Okay, so why am I going on this tangent? Well, it is because if you know me and if you watch this podcast, you know that I am an advocate for physical fitness. I'm an advocate for wellness, and I'm an advocate for physical health in the body. Therefore, I completely attest to this idea that training creates emotional regulation. When we go to the gym, I feel much better when I leave the gym versus when I come in. I can go into the gym and be having a really tough day. I can be tired. I can lack sleep and go into the gym. And once I get in there, there's a certain energetic force that happens in the gym. But once I then apply my physical body and movement, I leave feeling much better. Now, test it on your own. See how you feel if you do that. Of course, everybody's different. However, this is across the board. If you really want to put it to the test, then get up, start jumping up and down, see if it changes your state of emotions. So, here's the bottom line. Our body is a really powerful thing. I believe that fitness is one of the things that comes first. I would encourage everyone to start some type of fitness journey, especially if you are in the midst of feeling down and out, depressed or sad or grieving. The more that you lay in bed, the worse you're going to feel. The more that you get up and you create movement, the better you're going to feel. Plus, it takes your mind off of things and it helps you build self-trust in yourself. So physical fitness is huge. You're going to hear a lot of that coming into this new season. So don't be surprised if we talk a lot about fitness. I'm not pressuring anyone, but I am encouraging you because I think that it is that important. And again, I think it's a great starting point to help get your mental state and your emotional state regulated inside of your nervous system. Now, here is something that I'm going to say, it's a little controversial, but most people don't need more insight. Yes, we need to be reminded sometimes of certain things that's going to help us, but it's not that we necessarily need insight. What do we need to do? We need to start taking action, to start behaving differently, to start practicing how we live our lives differently, to start shifting our perspective. All of these things is going to help us get out of a sour mental state into a powerful mental state. Now, there's a trap that I'm sure that you're aware of, especially in the culture of social media, mainstream media. There is definitely a push inside of our culture to fall into this trap of consuming healing content. I know my algorithm on Instagram for the podcast, because I follow a lot of self-help things, and in my scroll, when I go to scroll through, it's so easy to consume healing content. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're consuming the information in this podcast. And even though I want you to consume my podcast, I want you to go like, follow, share, send to other people. Like, I do want my listeners, but I don't want you to just listen without executing or listen without integrating, because the most important thing is taking action. And listen, I can say this because I struggled with this. In fact, that was my old identity, where I struggled with taking action. I knew the right things to do, but I struggled to do them. Why was that? I don't know why our bodies do that, why our minds do that, and why we fall into these traps. I really don't know. I felt good about myself. I'm consuming all of this business content, but I'm not taking action in my business. So there's no results. So what happens a lot of times? People be like, oh, I tried and it failed. Why did it fail? You start a fitness journey. You learn about how to do fitness. You do all the things and you're like, I'm not disciplined enough to do it, so I'm not taking action. You feel good going to the gym. You feel good walking in the gym around that whole energetic force of everybody working out and doing things for themselves, but you're not taking action. So you don't see results, and then you go back and you say, doesn't work. We see this in relationships. People consume a ton of relationship stuff. And then when there's an argument arising or some type of conflict, people fly off the cuff and they lose their temper and they say all these harsh things that they shouldn't. And then they're like, relationships doesn't work. And listen, I'm not getting on to you, because this is human nature. If anyone says, oh no, that was never me, I've never failed on a fitness journey, a business venture, or a relationship, I've never had any of that failure, you're lying. Not only to yourself, but to everyone who you're telling that to. And if you can point out one person that truly has no failure, I would love to meet them, because I've never met anyone. And when I look back over the course of my own personal life, I can tell you that I've had so much failure. I've had immense amounts of failure. And for the longest, I thought failure was a bad thing. I hated to admit it. I didn't want people to think I was a failure. But then what happens? You realize, hey, you know what? I tried. And I'll tell you something that really stuck out to me over the last few weeks, that some people get triggered by this, especially for me being a female, supporting someone who seems to be such a controversial character. I am a huge Andrew Tate fan. I love Andrew Tate. Why do I love him? I wish that his real world, which I think there are women in there, but I wish it was more geared towards women, or I wish he had a sector that was geared towards women. Why? Because the man says things that is true. But what really increased my respect for him, I would say over this last month or so, when he had this fight with Chase Demore, and I don't really like violence, so I really don't like watching fights and things like that. But I'm like, I want to watch this fight because I do really like Andrew Tate. and they're pouring a ton of promotion behind this thing. And I'm like, I really do I want to watch this. And I like Andrew Tate. I like what he says. I like what he stands for. I don't believe the allegations towards him. People, I think he's a man with a past, which so am I. I'm a woman with a past. So, I mean, I can relate. I like what he says. I like watching his content. I like that he's polarizing. I watched this fight. I thought for sure he was going to win. One, because I believed in him, but two, because I thought even if he can't win, this man has so much money. He's going to pay this off and he's going to win anyway. I was shocked when he didn't win. And especially because of all the stuff on their promotional tour, how they talked so bad to each other. And so he ends up not winning. But this is what really made me respect him even more, is that this is a man who steps on stage and he says, he owns it. He said, you know what? Yeah, I lost. Yeah, it might have been because I was older. It might have been because I got tired. I don't have the same stamina. This is a kid. I mean, Chase More's not a kid, but he's young. Could have been all these things. And me being in my 40s, I can relate to this, right? But I would rather try and fail than never have tried. And it hit me. And I was already at this place where I realized I've gained this understanding over probably the last several years of my life, where I don't care to fail anymore. I mean, obviously we don't want to fail, but if we fail, we just chop it up as, hey, it's another experience. I did this thing. I failed at it. It didn't work. So now I've got to go back to the drawing board, right? I got to try to redo things to where next time it will not fail. But I think seeing someone of such a high profile figure that comes on the scene and they say, I did this, he could have made a mockery. And people hate Andrew Tate. Like, they really hate him. Because I read through the comments and people are just like, yeah, he got knocked out and da-da-da-da-da, whatever. And I'm like, he didn't care. He put himself out there. He doesn't care to get judged. He didn't care to get demeaned or what people say about him. He just doesn't care. And I respect that in people. And I think that if we could all adopt that kind of mentality that, hey, you know what? I'm going to run after my dreams. I am going to chase after the thing that I feel like I'm truly pulled and called to do in this life. I'm going to run after it. And I may not get it right the first time. I may try it and I may fail horribly. I may look like a complete fool. But you know what? I tried. I did the thing. I tried it. I failed. I don't care what other people think. I don't care what, and this is a human condition, right? We all care what other people think. We all care. If we didn't care, we would react so much differently. At least I would in my own life, right? I would still react a whole lot differently if I cared, if I didn't care. But I do care. I do care to an extent, and that's just being honest. But my goal is to get to the place where it doesn't bother me. People might think whatever about me. That doesn't bother me. I don't care anymore if they have this opinion or that opinion. I'm unbothered. I love that word. I'm unbothered by things. So here's the thing, without making this podcast episode super long, because it's just me, and I know no one wants to just hear me chit chat for a whole hour, right? So I just want to say this. I want you to enter this podcast knowing that this is a place where you feel seen and you feel heard, but you also feel challenged. This is a place that is going to push you to be your best self, not out of critique or condemnation, but out of love, out of true love and support and accountability for another human being. And why? Because ultimately, I believe that every person, if you're listening to this and you've listened this far, you have immense capabilities. You have immense gifts to give to the world. And there are people that are perishing every day. People that have addictions to deal with. They're dealing with grief. They're dealing with depression. They're dealing with self-harming things. And they're just waiting for you, your gifts. the thing that you have to offer to the world. They're waiting on you to step onto the scene and say, here I am. Here I am, Lord. Use me however you want. And, this is not a Christian podcast. So believe in the Lord, don't believe in the Lord. Listen, at the end of the day, you still have gifts. You still have purpose. You still could go out and you still have people that are just waiting for you to step on the scene and say, here I am. I'm here. I'm here to help you. I went through that thing. And instead of scurrying around in my shame, I'm going to voice the thing that I did because I know that I can pull other people out of that same shame that I dealt with, that same shameful situation that I dealt with. Now, here I am. I can help you through that. And that's the goal. At least that's how I see the world. And maybe I'm delusional. I'm not going to say that I'm not, okay? Maybe I am. I'm not going to argue against that or for it. The bottom line, and really what I want you together, if I had to say one defining thing that I would love for you to take from this episode, is that your triggers are not your enemies. They are mile markers, they're instructions, they're helping guide you. They're guideposts that's helping guide you down the path. You've ever walked through a path where there's fences on both sides, a fence on both sides, and you say, oh, it's guiding me. It's guiding me to make a turn, or it's guiding me to walk straight. That's exactly what triggers are. That's exactly what our emotions are. And the beauty is that we have a brain that's smart enough to figure these things out. Why are we making decisions like we're making? We can ask ourselves that. And guess what? You don't have to ask ChatGPT. Although ChatGPT is an awesome resource if you want to ask ChatGPT, why do I feel this way? It can give you some clarity, but I will tell you that you don't have to ask that. And sometimes I would even say, don't ask ChatGPT. Try to figure it out in and of yourself. Why? Because we are made in God's image. Now, if you don't believe in God, you can just sign off now and you don't have to listen to the rest of the episode, because I'm going to talk about this, because this is what I truly believe, that we are made in God's image. We have a direct line to God, and I believe that's through the Holy Spirit. But regardless, we are all very spiritual beings. So God speaks to us in ways that helps us navigate through life. When there's a glitch in the system, and I think a trigger or an emotion is a glitch in your system. It's an instruction. It says, hey, something's not quite right. You start to feel sick to your stomach. That's an instruction that says, hey, maybe you ate something bad. Maybe you're sick. Maybe you got a stomach bug. Maybe something's going on internally that you need to get checked out. Maybe you need to go to the doctor. So it is up to us to figure out why we're triggered, why we're feeling the way that we're feeling. And that's simply all that it is. And I would love to shift your perspective this episode and this season, shift your perspective in the sense that my triggers is just simply a guidepost. My fears, my fear of failure, it's simply a guidepost. My failures is a guidepost, all helping me get to where I need to go, which is ultimately your destiny, to fulfill the purpose that you have while you're here on the earth. And one day, you won't be here. Everybody has to go through this thing called death. It's part of the human existence. It's part of our experience here on this earth. But until that day, why not live life fulfilled? Why not live life to the fullest and bring as many people with you on that journey? And what does this do? It creates a ripple effect. So it not only impacts you from having made a difference, it impacts everyone around you that you made a difference in their life. And then it radiates energetically throughout the universe and creates an entirely different world. You have no idea the impact that you can make in someone else's life that will then impact someone else and someone else. And usually this ripples. What does a ripple do? It spreads. So it's a beautiful thing. That's how I see life, and that's how I would love for everyone to see it. Because I truly believe when you see things that way and you shift your perspective in that type of way, what happens? You create a ripple effect throughout the world. And it's a beautiful thing. And the world ultimately becomes a better place. Until the world is no longer, we have a responsibility to make it the very best and to view things in the most positive perspective ever, even amongst all the bad things that's going on around us. So what we focus on is going to expand in our lives. So focus on the good, keep your head down, focus on making your life better. And if that's you, then you're in the right place. You're going to join in with a whole bunch of other people inside of this community, and we are working tirelessly behind the scenes to build a community for this. I promise you, we're linking arms and we are creating a movement for as long as we have left here on this earth. And when I think of unstoppable, that's what I think. And it's not me. Yes, it feels good to say I'm unstoppable. Who give me that vision? God. I am unstoppable through him and only through him. And I want to invite you to be unstoppable because I truly believe that strength is in numbers, and the more people that we can get on board on this movement to shift the world, to shift human nature into a positive place, that's what it's all about. That's why we're here. So season 4, it's about healing. It's about growing. It's not about staying broken, even if you're beautifully broken. It's about healing and growing yourself back stronger than you were before. This is a space for those of you who are ready to lead. Let me tell you something. Healing is not soft. It's honest. It's disciplined, and it demands something from you. If this episode has challenged you in any way, if it offended you, then I pray that you'll reflect on it. Because season 4 is for those who are done circling the same lessons again and again and again. This is a space for true transformation. Welcome to the next era of Through the Trauma podcast.
Hey there, friend. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending this time here with us on Through the Trauma podcast. Your presence means more than you know. If this episode has spoke to you or gave you hope or made you feel just a little bit less alone, then I would love it if you would take a second, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who truly needs to hear it. Every share, every comment, every listen, it all helps our message get out and reach those who truly need it the most. Healing happens inside of a community, and together we are breaking the silence and creating space for transformation. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. You are not alone.